So God sends the word to talk to them when they don't want to eat the figs. And they're complaining about being mortal because it sucks. And they're like, when do we get to stop being mortal? I'm tired. They're still not eating the figs. They go back to the south border of the garden where like the river of the water of life flows and like waters the garden. They're like, hey, can we drink this water of life instead of the water from the mortal part of the land? And also, can you take us to a different place if we can't dwell in the garden? Because there's a lot of rocks here and it's hot and it sucks. And God is like, no, there is no other land that is nicer where there is rest. It is only the kingdom of heaven where there is rest. You guys are being punished. It's not supposed to be nice. They are not allowed to go to the kingdom of heaven until after their judgment is passed and fulfilled. End quote. And just like the fruit of the tree of life, they are not allowed to have the water of life either until after Jesus comes. Again, you guys are being punished. Mortality means you have to eat and drink the mortal food and water. It sucks. You're being punished. Shouldn't have eaten the fruit that I told you not to eat. Now eat the fruit that I did tell you to eat. The word of God, which I don't know if that's a stand-in for like Jesus, because Trinity, I don't know, I was Mormon, they don't believe in the Trinity. And Adam and Eve return to the cave, being bummed because they have to eat and they don't want to because they're scared. But there's another problem now that they've returned to the cave. There's a fire outside. Like the big old fire in front of the cave. That's not good. They do cry a lot. They're miserable. I don't blame them. Babies cry a lot. They're basically babies with speech capabilities. They're less than a month and a half old. I guess they're a little over a month and a half. Understandably, they're freaked out, and Adam turns to Eve and says, quote, "What is that fire by our cave? We do nothing in it to bring about this fire. Like, we didn't like that. We neither have bread to bake therein, nor broth to cook there. As to this fire, we know not the like, nor do we know what to call it." I guess they're calling it fire. I don't know how they know what bread and broth are, considering they barely know what figs are. Unanswered questions that I am left with, and now you are too. Anyway, they're like, how is there fire? We have not set a fire. Also, what's fire? I'm sorry, Sebastian. I would give you answers if I had them. You know I would. You know I want to give you all the answers because I want to have all the answers, and if I had all the answers, I would share them with you, but I don't. They know fire from the cherub's sword of fire, which is pretty scary. Naturally, they immediately assume, as usual, that this is another punishment from God. And Adam figures that, like how the cherub with the sword of fire was sent to guard the garden after they transgressed and keep them out of it, this fire is meant to keep them out of the cave because they've somehow sinned again. And Eve apparently listens quietly. Her actions aren't really mentioned, while Adam just freaks out about where they're going to live if they can't go back into the cave, and what lands they might be driven to, and what worse darkness might be there at night, because if you recall, they were very scared of the dark and still seem to be, and how far away the other lands might be, and if God is mad at them for all of the requests they've made of him. Adam's like, if we can't live in this cave, we won't have those gifts that God gave us, the golden rods and the myrrh and the fruit. What if we can't even communicate with God at all in this potential new land that he just made up? But as it turns out, this fire is not actually sent from God. It's not a punishment from him. Satan has, quote, gathered trees and dry grasses and had carried and brought them to the cave and had set fire to them in an attempt to burn the cave down. That's why the header for this chapter just says, the devil attempts arson. He was hoping that if he burned down the cave and destroyed it, Adam and Eve would panic and deny God and cut off their trust in him, but he couldn't burn it because God saw what he was doing and sent an angel to guard the cave from actually being consumed by the fire. Now, as far as I know, caves are usually made of stone, so I don't know how it would have burned. Add that to the unanswered questions list. But the point is, there's an angel guarding it. The angel prevented it from catching fire until the fire went out on its own in the morning. Satan keeps on bringing trees and throwing them into the fire and stoking it higher and higher, and Adam and Eve are so terrified of the fire that they won't even go near the cave. The angel is guarding the cave itself, but the angel can't get rid of Satan, like, altogether because he doesn't have the authority to, and also, he doesn't like to curse people. He doesn't like to talk like that. He's an angel. So he just hangs out and guards the cave from the fire until the actual word of God shows up and sends Satan off and says, quote, "Go hence. Once before didst thou deceive my servants, and this time seekest to destroy them? Were it not for my mercy, I would have destroyed thee and thy hosts from off the earth. I have had patience with thee unto the end of the world." Like, you are pushing your luck, Lucifer. Knock it off. Go away. And Satan does at this run away. Because, you know, it's the word of God. God is more powerful than Satan. That's kind of a given in like biblical stuff. But the fire is still burning. The fire has not been put out, so Adam and Eve still can't get into the cave because of the fire, so they both just stand out there and cry some more. Adam points out that fire used to yield to them, but now it doesn't. He says, quote, "But the fire is not changed in its nature, nor altered from its creation. It appears," he remarks, "that they have simply lost their power over it, like their power over the animals. Now the fire can burn them." Bummer! But Adam prays again, and is like, "Hey, God, thank you for sending him away, but we still can't get into the cave because there is a fire in front of the doorway we can't get in." And the word of God reiterates, like, how much they've lost, how much weaker they've become because of their transgression, and tells them off again for listening to Satan in the first place. Like, do you see how Satan doesn't keep his promises? Did you think that he loved you and wanted to exalt you like I did? No! He wanted to ruin your life and take everything from you. You see this fire? If you follow Satan, you and all of your descendants, quote, "will be plagued with fire and go down into hell after ye are dead." The word of God is like, you see this fire? This is what awaits you if you listen to Satan again. And when he's done scolding them, God makes the fire part itself, like the Red Sea, so that Adam and Eve can actually get into the cave and then, heads off. But Adam and Eve are like, "Thank you," and they start heading into the cave. And while they're walking, Satan's still hiding. And while they're walking between the two parts of the fire, Satan blows on the fire so that it burns them. Ow! They call out to God to save them, and God looks and sees their burns, and he doesn't heal them. He sends his angel to keep the fire away from them, like to keep it from happening again. And God reminds Adam again that Satan doesn't love him. See? He keeps hurting you. He burned you. Quote, "Then look at me, O Adam. I created thee, and how many times have I delivered thee out of his hand? If not, would he not have destroyed thee?" It's like, do you see why Satan sucks and you shouldn't listen to him? Driving the message home at every opportunity. And now, for the first time that I remember in this entire book, God speaks directly to Eve, saying, "What is that he promised thee in the garden, saying, At the time ye shall eat of the tree, your eyes will be opened, and you shall become like gods, knowing good and evil. But lo, he has burnt your bodies with fire, and has made you see the burning of fire, and the evil thereof, and the power it has over you. Your eyes have seen the good he has taken from you, and in truth he has opened your eyes, and you have seen the garden in which ye were with me, and ye have also seen the evil that has come upon you from Satan. But as to the Godhead, he cannot give it you, neither fulfill his speech to you. Nay, he was bitter against you and your seed that will come after you." Like, Satan hates you. Don't listen to anything he tells you. He doesn't really love you. Just so you know, again, don't listen to Satan. And then he leaves, just driving home the lesson a couple times to make sure they remember. So Adam and Eve finally get back into the cave, and they're pretty relieved because they thought with like the fire and all, they were not going to be allowed back in. And they weren't going to be able to get back in there. And, Adam had his whole freak out about it. And the sun goes down, but the fire is still burning outside, so they can't sleep because it's too bright and it's too hot and it sucks. I get that. Sometimes the light on my ring light right there, it has a little blue glowy dot that still glows when it's off. And so sometimes I have to hide it behind the curtain so that I can sleep because I'm distractible. So they can't sleep because of the fire. So instead, they go up the hill by the garden, that mountain that they jumped off of, and pray for forgiveness of their sins, and they go to sleep on the hill. Satan is still watching, by the way. He's just like seething over how envious he is of Adam and Eve. Well, of Adam, he doesn't actually mention Eve again. And he's like, God has promised salvation to Adam and that he will help him with his problems and his hardships, but he has made no such promises to me, and he won't help me out of my problems either. And now he's giving the kingdom of the earth to Adam and his seed? He resolves that he is just going to kill Adam, because then there will be no mortal humans to inherit the earth, and God will have no choice but to leave the earth to Satan and his hosts. He pretty much spends the whole time scheming, or carrying out schemes, or just throwing tantrums. I mean, he's Satan. I don't think he's supposed to be well-behaved. But yeah, that's his new plan. He's just going to kill Adam and Eve, so God will have no choice but to give him the earth. I don't think he's thinking this through very well, but no answers. Satan gets his demons together. He's like, guys, we're going to kill Adam and Eve once and for all. I guess he's not considering the fact that they have died like 6 times and God's just resurrected them every single time. He's like, we're going to kill them and take the earth for ourselves. Go throw that giant rock. Wait, what if there's a hole in the rock and that's the part that lands on them and it doesn't crush them? They wouldn't even die, and then they could escape. Use that other rock and throw it flat to make sure that it crushes them completely. But of course, God is watching over Adam and Eve, so instead of crushing them, the rock is transformed into, quote, a kind of shed over them. The rock, I don't have a visual aid for the rock. It's like this. This is my screaming goat box. So the rock is like this. It's a whole piece, and Satan wants to throw it on Adam and Eve, pretend it's bigger, like this. But God makes it hollow, like this, pretend it's bigger, so it's like a little shed over them. It's like a little clubhouse, a punishment clubhouse. So God is watching over them. The rock is transformed so that it does not get a scratch on them. It does, though, because it's still pretty big. It still shakes the earth and wakes Adam and Eve up. Now they're under this rock shed, and they freak out because when they went to sleep, there was not a giant rock shed over them, and they don't know what happened. So their first thought is that God has imprisoned them because he was angry that they left the cave without his permission. And Eve actually finally talks and says, if that's the case, quote, then woe be to us, O Adam, for our punishment will be long. At least this time they didn't immediately collapse from terror like they did the last time they saw some rocks. Progress! So they get right up and start praying for forgiveness. Or cry. I think they are crying, though. They pray until the morning comes, and the word of God shows up and is like, why did you guys come up here to sleep instead of sleeping in the cave like usual? And Adam says the fire was too hot for them to sleep. And God is like, oh, you thought that was hot. Do you know how hot it's going to be when you're in hell? By the way, Satan is actually the one who dropped this rock on you to crush you, but I made it like this so it wouldn't kill you. Just like how I will be sealed inside a rock for 3 days after I die for you. I want you guys to do the same thing now. You guys have to stay inside this rock for the next 3 days. It turns out he actually is mad that they left the cave without his permission, and so now they are grounded in the rock shed for the next 3 days. Naturally, they spend the entire time crying. By the time they're allowed to leave the rock, we are at chapter 50, and it has been 50 days since they left the garden. Good job surviving, guys. I guess you didn't. God's had to bring you back to life several times, so. Anyway, they go back to the Cave of Treasures after they're allowed out, and they spend the whole next day and night praying. And then once they've done that, Adam goes, quote, come, let us go and do some work for our bodies. The thing is, they don't actually know how to do any work. Also, they're all dirty and burned from the fire, and in pretty rough shape from like the freezing and the starvation and the dehydration. So they ask God to like show them something they can use for clothing to at least protect them from the elements. He grants them their request, their punishment fulfilled. The word of God comes after they request some clothing and instructs them to go to the seashore where some sheep have just been devoured by lions. The lions ate the sheep, left their skins, and Adam and Eve can use those sheep skins to make clothing for themselves. So they head down there, but Satan is still spying and has overheard, and he hurries to the seashore before they can get there. He's planning to throw the sheepskins into the sea or like set those on fire too so that they can't find them. He's just trying to mess everything up. Like I said, he just gets more and more comic book villain like every day. But the word of God comes down and finds him trying to mess with the sheepskins. So by the time Adam and Eve get down there, they find Satan so ugly that they are terrified to go near him because he is explicitly hideous. The word of God is like, see this guy? See how ugly he is? This is the guy that was hidden in the snake and tricked you and got you kicked out of the Garden of Eden. He promised you so much divinity, but look at him. No beauty, no divinity, no light, no glory. He can't even get divinity for himself. And, quote, now his figure is hideous. He has become abominable among angels, and he has come to be called Satan. Which, little etymology lesson here, I don't know if this person intended that, but Satan in Hebrew, the word Satan comes from that, and it means adversary. So if someone refers to the devil as the adversary, that's one of the names. Anyway, you know why he came down here? He was trying to steal the sheepskins that I was going to give you so that you couldn't have them. But I caught him and have bound him here so that you can see how pathetic he is. He can't even free himself from that. Look at this loser. And after making this example of Satan and reminding Adam and Eve how ugly he is and how much he sucks, he lets him go. Adam and Eve listen to this and turn their attention to the sheepskins. They start crying again because they hate that they have to wear clothes. Honestly, relatable. Adam's like, even this material to clothe ourselves is a token of death, because the owners of these skins had to die, just like we're gonna die someday. Adam is working through that existential dread. It's alright, man. But God gave them the sheepskins, so they take them and go back to the cave, and they have the sheepskins to make clothing, and they realize they don't actually know how to make clothing. Thankfully, God sends an angel to, like, teach them the whole sewing thing, and they make themselves some clothes, and they pray all night in gratitude for this. I mean, I guess they didn't have problems being naked before this, but then when the sun comes up, they say their prayers again, and they leave the cave, and Adam's like, let's go exploring. I want to know what's west of this cave. So they head toward the western border.